Well, hey there, guys. Welcome back to the channel. So West Ham are fifth in the Premier League after 10 games. But where can West Ham finish this season? What's been the best performance so far? And Dave Moyes and how he's doing, and new contract talks in the reports today. So to talk about all that and much more, so I'm joined by Tom from Hammers Chat, Dennis from the West Ham Way, JP from JP WHU TV, and Frankie from Claret Blue Army TV. So before we get going, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to us and leave your comments, questions in the live chat, and we'll get around to answering your questions and comments. So chaps, thanks for joining us. So we'll get straight into it. So, as I mentioned, a great start by the Hammers. I don't think any of us were expecting us to be fifth after 10 games. So, Frankie, we'll start with you, mate. So, where do you think West Ham can realistically finish this season?
I sort of had this discussion earlier, and we sort of discussed the Aston Villa game, a bit of a post-match review of that. And to be honest, I think both teams will finish roughly the same sort of position. I wouldn't be surprised if that was 8th and 9th or 9th and 10th. I think that's probably where my expectations are at the moment, which is, while it don't sound particularly exciting when you're sitting there in 5th, it's nice to not be looking over your shoulder for a change. So, yeah, that's where I would expect us to end up.
Yeah, good shout. JP, what about you, mate?
Exactly the same thoughts. Top 10, I'll be very, very happy with that, because as great as this winning runs that we've done over the last few games is going, and we've rode our luck a little bit, well, quite a fair bit, especially for the Fulham game, and as a result of it, yeah, top 10 for me, because if we get down to maybe 11th, 12th, it's still all right. But as Frankie, mate, as you just said, we need a season where we're not looking over our shoulder.
Yeah, good shout. Dennis, what about you, my mate?
I mean, going to come across as doing if, buts, and maybes, but that is how you predict the season. I mean, the games we've just had, the 3 wins on the bounce, they're all narrow, they're all tight. Another day, we could have drawn any one of those games, or even, against Villa, it could be argued that penalty goes in and the VAR shout was a bit iffy. Could have been 3-2 Villa quite easily. We could be having a very, very different conversation if we're 9 points down. However, the fact is we did win those games. Last season, we probably wouldn't have. There's an element, I mean, you make your own luck, I think is the old saying when I used to work in recruitment, and we have made our own luck by being a bit more ambitious. However, on the if, but, and maybe side of things, we pick up a big injury. Fabianski gets injured. I don't think Randolph makes as many saves as he makes. He certainly doesn't make that save from Trezeguet. Last night, we got United, Leeds, Palace, and Chelsea in December. Next 4 games. So Palace is probably the only one that I think we're nailed on to win out of those 4. Personally, I'd be very happy if we get 5 points out of that. It's a tough little run in, and then suddenly we're not necessarily looking over our shoulders, but as Frankie said, we're looking at that sort of 8th, 10th sort of area. So that's where I'm looking to finish. But again, we could quite easily finish 5th and keep this run up. We could also quite easily be sucked down into relegation battle if we pick up a couple big injuries. It's too early to tell. I'm going to agree with Frankie, though. I'll be aiming for 8th, or anywhere between 8th and 10th based on the start.
Well, yeah, then that's a really good point, mate. Because like you say, that's one of the things we massively have to factor in. Because ever since Fabianski picked up his injury the other season, we've seemed to, as a collective, we seem to have forgotten that we absolutely we know that we pick up 2 or 3 injuries in the starting 10. Fabianski's the biggest one out of the lot.
I mean, sorry to sort of potentially phase out Affers there, but if you look at losing Antonio for those few games, sort of messed us up a little bit. If you've watched us on the West Ham Way, I'm a big mark for Sebastian Haller, but it did take a couple of games to get him into the rhythm. So if we have a similar thing with Bowen, for example, or one of Rice or Soucek, that could really unbalance the side, which on paper could still win games, but you've got to take that unbalance into the factor. So yeah, right on there.
Yeah, good points there, mate. And Tom, what about you, mate? I don't think any of us will think West Ham finish 5th at the end of the season, but realistically, where do you think we'll end up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as I'm pretty sure everybody else, really. I think, top half of the table is where you're aiming for. In reality, it's nice, as Frankie said, to not be looking over your shoulder. I think overconfidence really is the worst thing that we can probably have right now, is because I think obviously we'll all remember a few years ago being top 4 at Christmas with Big Sam and how quickly it can turn on its head. So I think it's I'm what Dennis was saying there about injuries. I think that's the biggest thing for me is, we need recruitment in January, because if one of Declan Rice, I know Fabianski's a big position, you could say, for us, but I actually think Darren Randolph would do an okay job. I think the thing for me is if Rice or Souček was to go down, you saw the Everton game when Mark Noble and Robert Snodgrass were basically asked to play in that same position. The legs, they weren't there. They were, completely overrun. So we don't really have another natural defensive midfielder that can do what Rice or Souček does. The energy, especially that the two of them bring. I also think if Antonio's injury carries on, and God forbid that Sebastian Haller picks something up as well, you're down to one fit striker. After that, it's into the youth team. So I think that the squad's quite thin. So I think there is recruitment needed in January, and it's a tough run into Christmas. There's already the fixtures are already on top of each other as it is. So if we can somehow ride our luck, which would just be absolutely just mental if we manage to do it. And all this talk of Moyes getting a new contract doesn't, end up pulling us, further down. You have the old omen where he'll get his new deal, and all of a sudden we start losing however many games. I think anywhere between 7th to 10th, I think is where we could finish this season.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, mate. So let's go to the comments quickly. So Ben Davis, thanks for your comment. Meant top 10 would be brilliant. Yeah, totally agree. I think we'll all sort of say that. And I think for me, touching on what you said earlier, lads, that we had a good start to last season. Fabianski injured, we have relegation form, and then there was no in between really. Maybe towards the end of the season, we showed a bit of consistency after the first lockdown. We've got to make sure that we have a sustained level of consistency, which we have done so far, and then hopefully that can carry on for the rest of the season. And I think there's a real set style of play that and the players know what they're doing. Whereas under Pellegrini at times it just looks absolutely all over the place, and we're tough to beat now as well. I don't think we don't think we're one of those flaky sides anymore, our typical flaky West Ham side. I don't think we are that. We would have lost definitely would have lost the Villa game the other season, possibly Sheffield United as well, and maybe even draw against Fulham. So to win all three of them, I think shows we're tough to beat, and we've got a strong spine and a real backbone to our team, which I think we're all pretty happy with, to be honest.
Yeah, it can all go down like a house of cards quite quickly. You lose Rice, or Antonio doesn't quite hit the stride he had after that injury. You have some, Arthur Masuaku syndrome hits again, and he gets himself sent off for spitting at someone. That's 6 games out. Suddenly you have to change the formation of 4 at the back. We can't have 5 at the back, and suddenly it's a whole nother game plan, or ball game. Sorry, should I say?
But yeah, with Villa, we did go to 4 at the back. So and we did show that we can now we have that stability, because the defenders are playing with such confidence, because they've been able to keep 2 clean sheets in 3 games. That they've been able to, that we can revert back to that. But absolutely, I mean, let's also, injuries isn't just the main factor within this; it's confidence as well. If Rice has a couple of poor games, or even though his confidence doesn't normally get shaken, but Bowen could have that anxiety that he had at the start of the season, where he was trying too hard, which is causing us a few problems, especially in the Newcastle game. There's loads of different things we've got to take into factor, bearing in mind we're not even a third of the way through the season yet.
I may be the downer on this party, but I'm not actually exactly overconfident of how we're playing right now. I actually think we've been incredibly lucky. I actually think we've been pretty bang average the last 2-3 games. I think it's fair enough is the mark of a decent side. The big top 6, if you will, of yesteryear, they would always grind out results against teams, when they weren't playing so well. And that's, I guess, the part and parcel of why the big teams pick up points, because they may have an off day, but they'll somehow scrape a 2-1 win. But I look back at the Sheffield United game, and there's a couple of chances there. I think Baldock had one. I think, obviously, the one when Burnley hit the post. Fabianski was brilliant against Villa the other night, but I just think we rode our luck so much. We were god awful against Villa. So obviously luck plays into a massive part of it. But although I'm happy about where we are and the fact that we're picking up these results, we're winning 3 on the bounce. I'm not sold on the fact that we are as good as we seem to be at the minute. Because I think if we play Man United at the weekend and we get slapped 5-0 and all of a sudden it's sort of crashing back down to reality again, but yeah, I'm not overly happy with the way that we played the last couple of weeks. Maybe that's me being cynical because of just how we are as a football club.
Not at all. I tend to agree. I tend to agree with you there, mate. I think the term I like to use on West Ham, whereas I do end up being a negative Nigel. But ultimately, as I said, we've won those games where another day, let alone another season, we could have lost all three of those games. We could have drawn against Fulham and lost to Sheffield United, Villa if they're taking their chances. There were times where, big first half against Sheffield United, they had 2 or 3 good clear chances, and Fabianski kept us in it. And we got United. United have been on a hide into nothing recently. They fought well to get a win against Southampton. Get my teams mixed up now, but we are that team that teams end their bad run against normally. Leeds have been very exciting and very good attacking type of team we absolutely hate playing against, and so easy there. Palace again they're on a bit of a down run at the minute. They could quite easily turn up and ruin our day. We could then lose those 3 games on the bounce, and suddenly we come into the Chelsea game under a lot of bloody pressure, 3 scoring Chelsea. And again, like you said, Tom, we could all turn on its head. I agree with you. We haven't necessarily been as convincing as we would like to have been, and it does sort of remind me to go back to Zola 08-09, where we were a solid team picking up wins, but soon that team got picked apart. We had injuries to Collison and Barami. And then the next season we struggled. I'm not saying that's going to happen here. But what I'm saying is that West Ham, we get those solid 1-0 wins, and people think, West Ham, look at their position in the table. Whereas that's more down to circumstance. It's down to other teams playing poorly. It could be that we are in the next 3 games, we're having a very different conversation coming into Christmas, where suddenly we are starting to look over our shoulders at 12th and 13th. So I do agree with you actually.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Tom. But I think for me, it's about time luck goes our way, and being, the sort of not the better team, not the worst team who don't deserve the wins. I don't mind us having that bit of luck. I mean, especially in 2020 as a whole, you look at this season, Liverpool away and Arsenal away. I don't think we should have lost those games. I think we're better against Arsenal. Should have probably got at least a draw or win, and Liverpool possibly could have got a draw. And even last season, so earlier this year, before the first lockdown, away at Liverpool, we went 2-1 up and should have won. And Arsenal away, they won 1-0. We should have won that game. So there's been a number of occasions, and there's other games I can think of as well. There's been a number of times where we've been the better side and end up with 0 points. So we've got a draw, just no points at all. So if a couple of games,
don't get me wrong, I'm ecstatic with the way that David Moyes. I did say before the start of the season, over on Hammers Chat on our Patreon podcast, I did say I wanted David Moyes beyond this season. I think if he needed to feel that security, is what I said, as much as we need, to feel have a manager there for some time, because it's just been chopping and changing for far too long for me. So I think he has got us playing in a desired system that he wants. I think it's working, but for just, like I said, maybe it is the signs of a good team that can somehow scrape out these wins. I just think that there has just been some stupid luck involved. Like nobody could account for what Lookman was going to do with that penalty. Nobody could have accounted for the 2-3 decisions that we scraped away with yesterday. So yeah, it's just, like I said, I know that we are playing a better brand of football than we have done in the last couple of years, but it's, like I said, I just think we haven't been as good as we could be, or we have shown so far this season. It's probably what I'm more trying to say.
No, fair enough. No,
I mean, let's not forget that when David Moyes came in the first time round, he steadied the ship, he sorted out a few problems, and we were able to stay up. I said at the time that he deserved to have a new contract. A lot of us were thinking the same thing because of how the stability he gave us. Obviously, didn't happen. The board went in with a too high flying manager to for West Ham. Went back to David Moyes again, steadied the ship towards the end of last season, and is building on that. So if he's able to continue building on that, then we're in for a season we've probably been waiting for 30 odd years.
Oh, we'll see how it goes, mate. I mean, Kieran in the chat doesn't agree with you, mate. He said, I know this is unpopular, but I still think it would turn sour under Moyes. Well, thanks for your comment, mate. What do you guys make on that?
Well, he's only been awake a few hours. He's over in Australia, so he might not be having his cup of coffee yet.
Well, I have said a few times on West Ham that I do feel that the dithering Dave, as I like to call him, the ditheringness will cost us. Like I said, those injuries are happening because players, if we're in a comfortable position, Like when we were 3-0 up, 4-0 up against Wolves, he quite easily could have taken Mickey Antonio off.
It changed things against Villa, though.
He changed things against Villa, but here's the problem. He saw that as a gamble, whereas another manager would see that as a calculated risk or the solution. I guarantee you, David Moyes saw that as a tactical gamble and probably only happened because Mikel Antonio said, boss, I'm knackered. I can't. I've come back too early. That is probably what has happened. Rather than Moyes go, he's probably going to bring Ben Rama on anyway and thought, right, I've got to bring Seb on. And they changed the game round. I think that's more luck than good judgment. And that is coming from someone that's rather moderate on David Moyes. I wasn't very happy with him coming back, but I have eaten my hat. I did actually write an article for the West Ham where saying that he was Scotland's answer to Mr. Bean. That was just before the Chelsea. That was just before the Chelsea game. But I also wrote an article to go one for one. I also wrote an article released on the day of the Chelsea game that we need to play Yarmolenko through the channels a bit more. And look what happened at the end of in the 89th minute of that game. So I've leveled myself out there. So I have been critical of Moyes, but I have also written articles where I've had to eat my hat. I don't necessarily think it's going to turn sour under Moyes per se. But I do think his inability to make earlier subs will cost us points and will cost us injuries. I
will just quickly say on that point, though, that if he was seeing Mikel Antonio and he thought, fair enough, I need to sub you off, then he would have just gone, right, well, Sebastian Haller, you can go on for him. The fact that he actively took Masuaku off to change to a back four would tell me that he made the decision to benefit the team going forward, and that it was him instead of Mikel Antonio looking knackered. If he just took Antonio off, and I'd say fair enough, maybe he's seen that he's blowing. But for the fact that he actually changed formation and took Masuaku off as well was actually a big thing for me to say that, hey, fair enough, maybe I made the wrong decision, that we need to get back into the game here and actually, be more on top, have an extra man in midfield. So I actually give him credit for that, because I think it was the first time I've seen him actually step back and feel like him going, whoa, sorry, I actually got that one wrong.
Yeah, good chance. Right, let's move on to the next question. I think we've probably answered it already, but, there's no harm being optimistic. Is Europe a possibility? I mean, it's a strange season with COVID, etc. And fans are going to come back into the stadium starting from this week eventually, but... You just never. What do you for now? What do you guys think on that? I'll leave the floor open to you guys.
It's always a possibility. Whether it's reality is another matter. Because again, as we're saying with the team performance, there's many other factors that we have to take in. For example, in the last season at the Bowling, we got very lucky by getting into Europe because we fucked up that. The Stoke away game absolutely screwed it, and it was only by luck. But I think it was Arsenal that won the FA Cup, and that pushed us up into the qualifying rounds of Europe. We have to make sure that if we are challenging for Europe, I mean, it's not going to be the season. Moyes is saying he wants a top 8, so he's aiming for it, but I don't think we'll get there fully, as we mentioned earlier. But it's always a possibility. I know a lot of people are saying that this season is becoming the crazy season again, like when Leicester won it. But because in that season, Man United played sloppy, Liverpool played sloppy, Man City played sloppy, which gave Leicester the lead. To a degree, it's still going that same sort of way. But at the same point, we could get something massive. We could have a lot of luck for the rest of the season. We could have a Liverpool-style luck of season and get into the top 6. And there we go. We've got Europe.
We'll see how it goes. Frankie, what are your thoughts, mate?
Even if it was a possibility, I'd like to throw it, mate, to be quite honest with you. Because we never take it seriously when we get there. And if we got into a position where Europe was a possibility, I'd like to see us go, we're safe. We don't have to look over our shoulders anymore. Let's 100% focus on the FA Cup and try and get a cup final. And I'd much rather see us go and play all out for the cup than I would see us go all out for 6th position in the Premier League. It's one of them seasons. I do think something could happen this year, and something seems to be written in the stars, because I didn't comment too much a minute ago when we was talking about the results West Ham were getting, but this is well out of character for West Ham. These results we're picking up against, the form and how we're playing is I've never known it in my lifetime supporting West Ham, ever. I've never known us to play badly and still pick up results like we are, go and get results against Villa like we did, have the bit of rubber to green. I mean, we've had so much rubber to green. It's totally, totally out of character for West Ham. So there is an argument that something could happen to us this season and something's with us, and maybe we've broke that bowling curse at last and that's disappeared from us. Who knows? But if we did get to a position where we was very, very comfortable in the Premier League like we are now, if that continues and we start to get into the latter rounds of the cup, I would like to see us go all out there and try and get a cup final more than I would like to see us push for a European place, because we'll just go out before we get to the league stages anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point, Frankie. But one of the reasons for it, unfortunately, is because the squad isn't big enough for the rotation. We've just about got enough of a squad for the Premier League, much as a cup run or any other. Obviously, Europe is a cup run, so it's that's a very good point, mate. Yeah, we need to have a very, very good, competent squad in order to have to push for anything else.
Yeah, we'll knowing West Ham, we'll do that, Frankie, and we'll somehow still go out to Derby or someone like that in the 5th round through
pardon
my language, absolute shithouse performance.
Or Stockport again.
Yeah,
that's what happened. I'm telling you all, it's changed. That old West Ham that you're talking about there is gone. This season, it's not happening. We are going to go to a cup final this year, and that would be West Ham's luck.
No
because
fans.
We won't be able to go there. Exactly.
Yeah, that will still be the roll credits West Ham way. Yeah, I mean, I get that. At the same time, Europe, and like you said, Europe is technically always a possibility, but therefore so is also winning the Premier League if you want to play that sort of game. It's still mathematically a possibility. I don't see this type of luck lasting. I do get what Frankie's saying, and I like the optimism with that has changed. I do see us having, you may say small club mentality or whatever, but I consider a successful season as a West Ham fan, or a good season, being top half finish, minimum quarter-final cup run. That is the minimum I want out of, not the minimum, but that's what I want out of West Ham. That's what I grew up with. I grew up with the Redknapp days, so therefore anything above that, I think, is a good season. Anything above that. So if we were to finish 8th and get to a final, semi-final, or win the FA Cup, obviously I'd love to win the bloody FA Cup. That's the most disrespected trophy I think English clubs can have. People do not show that competition the respect it deserves. But obviously, it's a bit of a pipe dream. It's a bit way off. We haven't even had the 3rd round yet, But ultimately, I don't think we're going to get Europe. And like you said, if we go to Europe, I think that's an added pressure, because then what will happen? You get Sullivan. All right, well, I've got these free transfers. We've got this loan, this South American loan, and we
get
we'll try and sign
those
someone.
type of players again.
We'll sign like Mariga from Porto and be like, he's got European pedigree, and then we'll go out to Astragugu in the final qualifier.
Yeah.
That's what'll happen. And they go, we signed Jack Wilshere, we showed ambition. That's it. We'll re-sign Jack Wilshere on a free, because he'll be like, all right, well, Europe, you're a bigger club now. You need my technical sort of type player. So it will just be a catastrophe. That's what'll happen. The bubble will burst. So I'd, quite happy we finish 8th and go for the FA Cup, like Frankie said. I could see typical West Ham. We'll go out in the 5th round to a Championship side. Sheffield Wednesday, Derby, someone like that. And then then it will be one of those FA Cups where someone really shocking wins it, like Southampton, not shocking in a bad way, but someone you don't surprise, like Southampton or Everton, and you're like, oh, we could have won that if only we had taken it seriously,
Yeah, exactly.
So,
what about you, Tom?
I'm with Frankie on this one. I would much rather us go for an FA Cup than anything else. I think if you focus on the league and the FA Cup, it's hopefully the higher up the league that you can finish, the more pennies it is in the back pocket, I guess. But whether or not that being reinvested, but I'm the same. I'd much rather attack Europe if and when in the next sort of 3 to 4 years we had new owners that would say, right, you're in Europe now. Here's £150 million investment on some actual good European talent, rather than just scattergun. Oh, we'll take him because they've played in Europe before, and hopefully they do a job for us. So I be inclined not to throw Europe, but fair enough if we get knocked out before the group stages, I wouldn't care. I'd rather just be in a position where if we were going to aim for Europe, A, double our squad depth, B, get players that are good enough to play in Europe, and C, have a good manager that may be able to actually take us far in Europe as well, because I don't think those tactics would translate that David Moyes has well right now into over to Europe. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I would take Europe, but I don't want Europe. I would rather us, just focus on something like the Cup just for the next couple of seasons until we are, I would say, in a position where we can invest properly, or we have owners that don't mind dipping their hands in their back pockets and investing in a squad that can compete in Europe.
And going off that, mate,
if we do,
Irish Tommy's made a very good point on the back of that, Tom. No, further down.
Yeah, I'll just go to his comment first.
Sullivan, yeah, the Sullivan comment. I mean, that's it. If we win the FA Cup, you know what will happen. Yeah, you know what will happen if we win the FA Cup? David Sullivan will be on TalkSport giving it the big and Jim, West Ham fans complaining at the beginning of the season, shows what do they know. It will still, the owners will still find a way to make us feel bitter. Like,
no, of course,
not when we win, but in the aftermath, it will wear off for a couple of months. It will be like, oh yeah,
if we win, it's David Sullivan's win. It's the
like
ball.
when they're on the
if
pitch,
we lose.
Yeah,
it's David. If we lose, it's David Moyes' fault and the squad's fault. If they win, it's always the board.
Yeah, it's like when they were on the pitch at the playoff final. It was all about them. It was all about them. It wasn't Allardyce. It wasn't Allardyce. It wasn't the team. It was him. It was them. Should I say?
All right, next question, lads. How's David Moyes doing? Tom, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, can do. I think he's doing exceptionally well with what he's been handed to him. I think a couple of weeks ago when it was, Ben Rama or Josh King, I know we ended up getting Ben Rama, but I thought you got to back your manager. If your manager's come out and publicly said or privately said to you that he wants Josh King, I think you should move head and shoulders to get Josh King. I think it's difficult because I think he's asking Sebastian Haller to play a position when Antonio's injured that he's not necessarily comfortable with playing, or he doesn't fit the same sort of style as we would expect of Mikel Antonio. So I think after last season, I thought the results that he had, and knowing that he was going to go into the season as West Ham manager, which he hadn't had before, now is the time to back your manager and give him, the right squad or the players that he wanted to do that. I don't think the recruitment's been great for him, but however, he's making it work. He's sort of got rid of the dead wood, so to speak. He's got rid of players that he didn't necessarily think were going to improve his squad or get minutes. He's gone with a desired formation that seems to be getting the best out of Masuaku and Cresswell. Soufal, I think, is the best bit of business we've done in a while, but again, it's not somebody that he had outlined. It came from Thomas Souček. So I think he's the deal that what he's been dealt, he's actually doing very well with it. And he's finally got us playing a style of football it can be all right to watch sometimes, but sometimes it can look a little bit negative. But he's finally got the harmony in the squad, and I think he's actually done a really good job. So I'm inclined to give him that new contract now or at the end of the season. I'd potentially wait till the end of the season just to see how it shapes out. But yeah, I think he's actually probably surprised probably 99% of the fan base to actually how well he's doing right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think he surprised me because I think he's doing better than what he did in his first spell. I think we're scoring more goals. We're a lot more threatening in terms of creating chances, scoring goals than their first spell. We relied so much on Marko Arnautovic in his first spell, whereas I think we've got there's a more sort of settled style of play, and even as I say, we haven't played that great last few games, but we've still created chances, even though we've been the inferior side. So I think it's surprised us. I think, and it maybe look at his managerial history as well. I think Man United, no one's really done well there. Sociedad, no British managers really do well abroad generally, and Sunderland, no manager's done well there, and they're in League One. So look, I don't think he's at the David Moyes we saw at Everton, but I think he's slowly getting towards that. And we saw what he did at Everton. He got a few seasons under his belt. He was backed, and there was such a good side when he did leave. So whether we'll get to that stage with him, I don't know. But I'm more optimistic how he's doing than maybe in his first spell where it was quite negative, I thought.
Yeah, I mean the thing with like the difference between first David Moyes' team and this David Moyes team is the midfield. You got two central midfielders that are top quality.
Yeah.
That is the big difference. I mean, that midfield, you had Claret, who by the end of his time at West Ham couldn't run in a straight line. I remember I worked with an Arsenal fan, and we were linked with Coquelin, if you remember that January. And he was like, "Are you guys seriously after Coquelin? He's not good." And I was like, I answered with these two questions: can he make a 4-yard pass, and can he run in a straight line? He was like, "Yeah." He's an he is an improvement on Chiate at the minute. Peak Chiate was brilliant, but when he didn't get his Spurs move in 2016, he sort of just didn't care for a year and a half. He's doing okay at Palace by all accounts. But the thing with Moyes, and we had a very similar discussion before the Liverpool game on the West Ham way, and it's a little bit fairer to talk about it now, because I even said it's a bit annoying we're even having this conversation, because it's after 2 wins. That was after we beat Leicester, and then the Spurs game. Is that we see it as a good or a negative, but the board always negotiate contracts at the end of summer until summer. They never give contracts early. I remember when Allardyce had us in third at Christmas, Sullivan was giving it the big one on Soccer AM on the sofa, saying that, well, if we get top 4 and it's a month before the end of the season, of course we'll give him a new contract. And it was like, if that's what it takes for a manager to get a contract early, top 4, you know, if Moyes had us in 4th place in March, I'd be screaming, give him a contract, you know, let alone top 4, I will give him a contract in April. So the way I see it, no matter what, the contract negotiations will happen in summer, no matter what we think. Is that a blessing or a curse? Who knows? Because it could give Moyes the opportunity to get another job, but equally, it is a little bit of a safeguard again if we nosedive. Let's say we're looking like we're finishing 7th, and then we lose our last 5 games on the bounce. We finish 12th. It's a different conversation. He probably gets offered a different contract. You know, maybe a less financially lucrative, maybe a less secure. I mean, my solution for Moyes is you've got to give him something. You can't just give him, because people are saying, "I'll give him a 1-year deal." You can't disrespect him with a 1-year deal, no matter how much we win. But you've always got to give him something like along the bread line. So I would say an incentivized 2-year contract, where at the end of the first year we look at where we are and we say, right, okay, you've got to get this in your second year to get a new contract, is how I would do it from now on. Because David Moyes clearly, whereas last time, I think in the first one, other than having the midfield, going back to my original point, is that he knew he was out the door, probably knew he was out the door by summer. It was only really David Gold that wanted him. He knew Sullivan, after the Burnley game, Sullivan wasn't going to give him a contract. So there wasn't a lot of motivation to really try. Whereas here, he was told, even if we get relegated, he's going to be the manager next year. He's gotten stuck in. He's implemented what he wants to do, and he has, you know, whether it's with a bit of luck or whether it's based on him, ultimately we are now 5th place in the table. And for that, you look at that, you think he deserves a contract, but it won't happen until the end of the year. And whatever we do, I think we can't just give him just a long-term contract. We can't just give him a short-term contract. We have to give him something to aim towards. You know, we've got something to work towards, because clearly that incentive, the incentives are working. Look at what's happening now.
Frankie, how do you think Moyes is doing, and what do you make of the reports today that he might be offered a new contract?
I've just sort of been beaten into submission with it, to be honest with you, mate. You know, he's doing enough to make me say, yeah, he deserves a new contract. I do think it makes sense to wait till the end of the season. Even if we do have a really good season, I think 2 years is still where I'd like to be. I don't enjoy watching us at the moment. I enjoy the fact that we're getting results. I am looking forward to watching our games more. And there was a time where I'd lost a bit of interest, and I am interested in West Ham United again, which is, you know, a marked improvement. So I'm happy for that. But I don't. The last 3 games, I haven't particularly enjoyed watching West Ham play football. I don't think we played any decent football throughout them 3 games. I think it's been a real ground out results and a lot of luck that's gone with it. One thing that's really annoyed me with David Moyes and the decisions that he makes, because I actually think it's a collective. I think the danger is, if those backroom coaching staff get offered jobs elsewhere and they was to move on, I think that's what could make it unfold. Because I think it's not David Moyes on his own that's achieving what we're achieving at the moment. I think it's everyone. I think we've got more first-team coaches than any other football club in the Premier League. But I don't mind that, and I was talking about this on the WhatsApp group earlier on. Maybe football will move like that a bit, because I watch the all or nothings on NFL football teams, and they have a coach for every single individual position. They have special teams coaches. It's so much detail.
Liverpool got a throwing coach.
Exactly.
I mean, they do have 50-man squads though, so it's a bit.
Yeah, but that's the way we might see it go, and maybe Moyes is a little bit ahead of his time there. That he has highlighted very, very good coaches to do the jobs, and I think they're the people who deserve a lot of credit as well. I don't think David Moyes don't deserve any credit. I think he does, because he's put that team together. But I do think it's the collective that's achieving things. But if you look at what decisions Moyes actually makes himself, I actually put the last 3 games as a whole, where we've struggled isn't just because we haven't got Mikel Antonio. I actually think he's made a change based on Declan Rice wanting to add goals to his game. And he swapped Declan Rice and Thomas Souček around in terms of who gets forward and who sits. Now, Declan Rice is a brilliant defensive midfielder. When he sits in that hole, that is when the game's in front of him, he reads it so well. And I think that's where, and he was a centre-half, and that's why he's brilliant in front of the back 4, or back 5 as it is at the moment. I know he's got around England, and he's all getting a bit of it. I want to get forward. I want to add goals to my game. I want to do this. I want to do that. Sorry, Declan Rice, you're better off in front of that defence, and that's where your best position is. Thomas Souček, at the beginning of the season, everyone was saying, we've finally got a midfielder who's going to score 10 goals a season. And all of a sudden, we've ripped that from the team. And I can't for the life of me see why. When Thomas Souček used to pop up in the opposition box, he was a massive threat, so dangerous. And Thomas Souček, if you look at how he plays now, he just don't seem to be enjoying it as much. When he had that freedom to bomb forward, he loved it, and he had this spark about him. And the good thing about Souček doing that is he is one of them natural athletes. His engine, he can run for 90 minutes non-stop. Declan Rice has always had this problem where he gets to sort of the 70th minute and he starts blowing a little bit. And you see him almost give up on tracking back at times when the play's got in front of him and he's gone forward and he's made one of them driving runs that he does, but doesn't do enough. So they're the little decisions that I think David Moyes is making at the moment that makes me feel like if he didn't have all of that coaching staff around him, maybe we wouldn't be in the position that we're in. But we are, and I'm taking it, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying having the stability we've got. And if that means we've got to give him a couple of years, fine. But I would like to see us at some point improve on the style of football that I'm watching. And I'm not convinced Moyes is a man who can achieve that with West Ham United.
Yeah, good points there, mate. JP, come to you. So what are your thoughts on the contract news and how Dave Moyes, how he's doing overall so far?
I think David Moyes is, just to echo what Frankie's been saying just there, mate. David Moyes' strengths is the training ground, because he's brought out the player that we were hoping to see in Masuaku a few seasons ago. You know, he's brought out the best of Balbuena recently as well. Having Ogbonna alongside him, granted, is a lot of that strength, but he's exceeding any expectations I ever have of Moyes. I was a fan of him last time round. I didn't think he'd be the right manager for this time round, but at the same time, you know, I think he's doing well. His decision making during games is better than the end of last season. He seems to be making substitutions a bit more tactfully now than he was beforehand. In terms of the contract, as I just said on the weekly live chat, I think now is the wrong time for him to have the contracts. Discuss it. I guarantee he's discussing it with him now on a regular basis about what they're trying to do here and there. January is probably the better time to go into more depth of negotiations for the contract, because at the end of the day, as we all know, all the players are having their contracts discussed in December, January anyway. So, but yeah, if we're in a decent position in January, February time, then I personally would give him the contract there and then. But as Dennis has quite rightly said, it's probably more than likely going to happen towards more of the end of the season where it'll actually be confirmed, unless we have a mental 10 games where we're literally just sitting in the top 4 or 5 by the end of January, beginning of February.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, let's move on to the next question. So, what's been the best performance of the season? Dennis, we'll start with you on this one, mate.
Is this team or individual?
Team.
Oh, even though it wasn't quite as much of a scoreline, I'm going to say the Leicester game, because
I agree.
You can talk about the 4-0 versus Wolves, but I got some stick in the comments at West Ham for saying, but that game, Wolves, I wouldn't to say they didn't turn up might be a bit disrespectful to how we played, but Wolves did not play at their best. Be it that our tactics or whatever. Whereas against Leicester, we were up against it. Yeah, Jamie Ugbonna versus Jamie Vardy was a defensive masterclass. I mean, he channeled his inner Maldini that day. Did Ugbonna. Absolutely fantastic. Mikel Antonio's headed goal was a thing of absolute beauty. Fornell smashed one in, and Bowen's run was amazing for the third. So for me, the Leicester performance is the performance of the season so far. I mean, reasons why. I mean, if you want to talk about 10 minutes and the 10 minutes against Spurs for the goals, but actually, unpopular opinion, we didn't play that well. I think Spurs just completely switched off. I mean, it was quite the first two goals were very lethargic, where Spurs were a bit arrogant, and the final one was desperation. Great moment, don't get me wrong. That Lanzini goal is probably going to be moment of the season, no matter what. But Leicester is the game for me where it was just a fantastic performance from West Ham. Everyone on the pitch did their bit. Everyone was fantastic. I think the only criticism we had was Charles, who had this criticism, Bill, was Fornells receives the ball with his back to goal too often. If that's your one criticism, I think we've had a good game.
Yeah,
he's not facing goal when he gets the ball, and he kept losing his temper about it. And it was just if that's your problem, okay.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, mate. I think because it was away from home as well. Leicester didn't have a shot on target as well, and Leicester won all three of their games before we played them. They just beat Man City 5-2 as well. So, I think I totally agree about best performance for me. JP, what about you? Do you go along with that or something else?
It's difficult to choose. Personally, I agree with Leicester. It was the game that brought everything together. It really, really was. But I kind of think that our best performance really was either Leicester or was Arsenal, because we had a good performance against Arsenal. We were just unlucky with a couple of things.
That's not a bad shout. Yeah.
Again, because that was the game where you could see that the ghosts of the Newcastle game had been shaken off, and we were really going toe to toe with Arsenal for a lot of the time. I know Arsenal aren't exactly the Arsenal of old at the moment. If they were, that would have been for me. That would have been the performance of the season. But it's very, very close between those two. Very, very close.
What about you, Frankie?
Yeah, Leicester for me for the same reasons you've said, mate. I think it was just seen them since. They're still picking up good results. I know they sort of had a bit of a blip in the last one, but they're still a really good side. And to go and do what we did to them up there was really, really decent, mate.
And Tom, what about you?
Sorry, I just had my dinner delivered.
I wondered why the camera went off.
I just got.
I thought your cat was interloping again.
Nah. That'll be the next watch along. No, I just had chicken casserole and dumplings.
David Moyes just rang you.
Yeah. No, it's I pretty much the same as you guys. I think Leicester was absolutely brilliant in terms of team performance. I also thought City, in terms of actual team performance, when we actually dug in and we looked actually very resolute defensively, I think is the main thing. But yeah, I think on the whole, there's been, prior to sort of the last sloppy 3 games, I think we've looked as a team actually very good in most of the games we played this year. But yeah, I think Leicester is obviously the standout, just as how good a team they are, and to hold them without a shot on target at home after the results they had is 100% our best performance so far this year.
Yeah, good stuff. And what about what's changed really? I mean, obviously, there's been a formation change after Newcastle's game. We played poorly, and then we went to sort of a wing back system. Has it just been that has been the catalyst for our good form, or do you think it's been a combination of things? I'll leave the floor open for you guys.
Bill, as you remember when you and I and Frankie were talking about this a few weeks back, I hated the idea of having a back three because it exposes our centre backs, and after pretty much from Arsenal onwards, that completely changed. So it was a very, very good shout from Moyes to change it up both ways. Experiment with a back three, try and figure out if we could slip in a back five at the same time, and then turn it around and adjust with the back four as we did against Villa. I think that's. I kind of think that that Moyes' experiments have paid off this time, rather than Pellegrini's experiments, which a lot of the time didn't pay off. But that's what you want to see. You want to see something that's you're not expecting. I've always maintained in all the previews I've done and in the watch-alongs and match reviews and all that stuff that you need to be adjusting your formation to exploit the weaknesses of the team in front of you. That old saying that the war is won before the fight has started. It's because you've got to try and outthink the opposing manager and try and exploit everything in front of you. And sticking at one formation for the majority of a season isn't a good idea, because some teams a 3-5-2 will work, some teams a 3-5-2 won't. So you have to adjust it. But as I said, I do think that was the catalyst, is that Moyes is experimenting at the right times.
Yeah, good shouts, mate. What about you, Frankie? Is it down to the formations? Is it the personnel? They're playing Soufal and Balbuena instead of Diop and Fredericks? Was it a combination of things?
I just think it's that coaching sort of collective that's just clicked. We've got a new fitness coach in as well. I think he's worked wonders. We've got more running in us than we've had in a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, definitely.
I think and that's I actually put it down more to that than the formation. I'd love to see us move to a back four now. And as much as that would scare a lot of people and it may completely backfire, but I'd like to see it, just because I think that back four was exposed because of. We had a lot of prima donnas in that team who couldn't be bothered to track back, couldn't be bothered to run. That was leaving players isolated and in trouble at times. And I don't think we got that anymore. So I actually think we'd probably, in certain games, especially the lesser teams, I think we'd get away with a 4-4-2 now. Moyes has hinted it the other day. He said, if anyone thinks we haven't got a backup plan, they're wrong, because we are prepared to play Haller and Antonio in the same team at the same time and change the formation up. I'd love to see Moyes do it, because like JP just said, playing the same way for too long is never a good idea, because you get found out. And I actually think we're in a place now where we could change it, because I think we're not carrying anyone anymore. There's no one that's not working for everybody. I think everyone pulls together, and that's why when we're playing badly, we are still picking up results, because even if it's not clicking and even if it's not quite coming off for us, the work rate's still there and everyone still runs for 90 minutes and everyone tries. And that's the biggest change for me, is just we look fit, we look like we've got 90 minutes of running in us, and that level of commitment to the call is far beyond what it was last season and the seasons before that.
Yeah, totally agree. Spot on. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, the thing is, I always say this with Charlie. I think that formation, it works so well for teams like Wolves, because the fluidity from back to front with your fullbacks pressing high or getting down the way. I always think we look far much more dangerous when we see either Masuaku and Soufal going forward and trying to actually, if Fornals and Bowen are trying to cut in, to have that extra support down the right-hand side. Like Frankie said, we've got a lot of running in this team now. We have players that will track back. They've got good engines. We've got midfield that, as Frankie I know said earlier, that for 90 minutes can just sort of, or one of them at least in Souček, that's just not non-stop running for 90 minutes. But I also think it's a formation that can be adapted to one that suits Sebastian Haller specifically and Mikel Antonio, because if there was a video that I don't know who it was, if it was Tifo Football or somebody did, the way that Frankfurt got the best out of Haller at the time was having the two wing backs, Da Costa and somebody else.
I watched it. It was Tifo. I watched that.
Really
good.
That would bomb forward. Then you have Antonio and Haller up top, supported by the top tip of the diamond, potentially by Fornals. I think, as Frankie said, I'd love to see us go to a back four, because then we can bring Fornals into a more central role where I think he's more creative. At the minute, I think Moyes has said that he wants to, or he did an old video, which was when he had Stephen Pienaar out on the left, he would use him as a false winger because he didn't necessarily have the pace to beat his man, but they would assume to play against what would be a winger, but he wasn't. He was, a false winger, whatever he would call it. So I think there's ways that you can adapt this five at the back system to get the best out of it. But I always think we do look more dangerous when we do have both fullbacks that can get forward and back, and a bit more fluid, and not sat deep for 90 minutes. Because, like I said, there was times like the first 5 minutes against Fulham, or first 10 minutes against Fulham, or the first 5 minutes against Villa the other night in the first half. It can work, but for some reason we've just switched off and it's not been sustained. So I don't know. I think, like I said, it can be adapted, but how stubborn David Moyes will be to, even though he says he has a backup plan, to actually go and implement that, I will be, we'll have to see. But like I said, I think it can work, and it can be adapted. So.
I'll say it goes. Before we come to you, Dennis, just bring up this comment from Irish Tommy. Thanks for your comment, mate. We were conceding far too many goals in a flat back four. Moyes' first job was to make us more difficult to score against, which he has done. And, so that's pretty much spot on. And then played flat back four in the second half against Villa. Be interested to see, as you guys have said, whether he does it going forward. Dennis, what are your thoughts, mate? Why do you think we've got a number of wins this season?
Two seconds on that comment about back forward of Villa. It just shows that sometimes you need a different game plan for different teams. Yeah, which is probably, again, when it comes to the Dithering Daves phenomenon, as I call it, that's where we could get stopped short. That's proof in the pudding there. But where we've done well is, I think everyone on here so far has raised points that I 100% agree with and would have elaborated on. However, the other thing I'd add to that is I think Moyes is benefiting or reaping the rewards from signings performing better now, such as Fornell's needed that time to embed and adapt to the British game. He was just starting to get there, like with his goal against Leicester, as Pellegrini went. Also, we haven't had a winger quite like Bowen for a very long time. And Moyes, that wasn't a Moyes signing because I think X pretty much said that Pellegrini was looking at him and the board decided to sign him. And also, we find he got that second centre mid in Soucek. He's benefited from other things. So that's where I sort of take the credit away from Moyes a little bit there. But ultimately, he is the gaffer. He is making the decisions. He's putting the team together. But it's alongside Kevin Nolan and Alan Irvine on the touchline. Not so much also on the training pitch, but also having that little word in the ear. Whereas I think before we had Stuart Pearce, Alan Irvine, and another fella. So it's a large coaching team. Yeah, a large coaching team was always part of Moyes' thing at West Ham. Whereas Pellegrini, I think, used to have people that weren't necessarily. I think he signed people that weren't. He had people in his coaching staff that weren't necessarily football people. No. I think was what the people were talking of. I know his son was the Chiefs, was part of the scouting team. There was the setup wasn't necessarily great under Pellegrini. So I think Moyes, credit has to go to Moyes, credit has to go to the coaching staff and system. But ultimately as well, he's benefited from some external factors. There's some games where if we were at London Stadium and sometimes the fans can turn, would we have performed as well? Would we have held on? Possibly not. But ultimately, we can't complain. We're winning games. There's never one precise reason for us winning multiple amounts of games. To win one game, two game, maybe, but you can't pin it on one thing. It's a manner of things. I mean, Moyes turning a winger into a striker again. Yeah, you can give Moyes the credit there, but Antonio has already played as a centre forward before. Could you have predicted it would have worked as well? I mean, I'd wager that Antonio becoming a striker on goal return in the short period of time was possibly better than Arnautovic. I'd say. I mean, Arnautovic managed 21 goals in 2 seasons, and he had a season and a half of playing up front. Antonio can't be far off that.
Yeah, good shout.
If he keeps playing till the end of the season, he'll probably pick up another 8 or 9 goals, and that's pretty similar. The difference is I don't think Antonio is going to end up being a snake like Arnautovic, but famous last words. I mean, he could be a bit boisterous, but he doesn't see me as someone that's going to turn around and sling his hook. I mean, his contract, what happens if his contract's possibly interesting and possibly a topic for another show or one you've had before that I haven't seen. But yeah, you can't. I think you can, in summary, to end this rambling point, in that everyone's points are correct here. You can't pin it on one thing. It's a menagerie of things, and none of these points can be understated. I mean, so much goes into a football team, and we've seen when, for example, I can remember when we had Julian Dix as assistant manager, and apparently all he did was put out the cones. So you got to get you set up from A to B. You got to get up, and like you said, someone mentioned earlier, Liverpool had a throw-in coach. That's the level of speciality you want to aim towards. I know we'll never get that far under these owners, but that's the level of specialism you want to get towards if you want to be an elite football team. So I just hope we keep this backroom staff together and we just keep adding to it.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. Well, thanks for your time, Chaz. We'll just finish off on this question from Irish Tommy before we wrap things up. Should we have signed a right wing back similar to Masuaku rather than Soufal? That might be something to look at in January. But what do you guys think on that?
No, I think it works. He's a bit more defensive minded because that way, when Masuaku pushes up, it sort of works slotting across almost like Tetris, where you suddenly Cresswell has to push up a little bit left, so everyone has to go a little bit more left, and Kufal can't be halfway up the pitch. He's got to be in that sort of right back slot still, or cutting it a little bit defensively. He does sometimes find himself inside. So for me, I think it helped having a defender like Soufal actually helps the system a little bit. I think when Masuaku is cut short.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't think you could have nailed a better signing than him anyway. And I think it shows the fact that the level that Fredericks was playing at, and he's since that injury not actually been able to get back into the team because of how well that Soufal has played. I think that's a testament to it. So fair play to for Souček for pointing out his old mate, because I don't think you could have tried so many different signings there. You know, we could have gone for Matty Cash for twice, 3 times the price. We could have gone for, Bogle, who ended up going to Sheffield or whatnot. There was so many different options, but I think we absolutely smashed it out of the park, or should I say Souček smashed it out of the park on that one. And like I said, or Dennis just said there, he can almost slot back if Masuaku goes forward into a more traditional back four to help out defensively if one of them pushes forward. And I think he's just as good defensively as well, and he's got such an engine on him too. So yeah, I think Thomas Souček, number 1 scout, smashed it out of the park for that one.
Slavia Prague do have a bloody good goalkeeper. Just going to put that one out there. They've got a bloody good goalkeeper.
What about you,
Nothing wrong with Fabianski. No disrespect to Fabianski, but they've got a good 25-year-old goalkeeper.
I'm not convinced by Soufal, and I think teams are targeting us down that side more. It used to be our left that they would target. They're massively targeting our right now. The amount of times Soufal gets caught out of position and he has a runner go on inside him, it's already caught us out a couple of times already, and it continues to happen. And teams are definitely targeting him as our weak link at the moment. He was cheap. He's 30 years old. He's pushing it. If you'd have given, even now, if you'd have said to me, you can swap Matty Cash for Soufal, mate, I would jump at it all day long. I'm absolutely not convinced. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's any more than that. I think he'll do us a job for this season, maybe next season, but I would certainly like to see us upgrade it from now. Positionally, I know he could learn that because he is playing in a different role than what he has been. He is more of a traditional right back, but he gets caught out far too many times for me, and teams are definitely targeting him when they play us. So not totally convinced yet.
Yeah, and likewise, the reason being is for me is the difference is Masuaku is a winger. He's not a wing back. He is a winger being played as a wing back, and Soufal is a right back being played as a right wing back. Now, Soufal's only had a handful of chances as a right wing back with Slavia Prague, but at the same point, his as Kieran as told me, I know why he's asked that question, because at the end of the day, Masuaku's mind is getting more defensive over the last season and a half, possibly, than when we brought him in originally. And let's not forget, obviously, that Soufal is brand new to the Premier League. That's why everybody's targeting him, because he's inexperienced in what needs to happen in this league. He's slowly learning it all, but at the same point, I do genuinely think that we need to remember that Masuaku isn't a wing back, and Soufal isn't a right wing back either.
But I would say to that though, JP, is that he is a fully fledged international as well. So, and he's played in Europe too. So maybe he's better. True, but I still think maybe fair enough. His best position is at right back. Maybe that teams are targeting him, more down that right hand side. But I still think he's done more than enough for us so far. Like I said, surely David Moyes, if if there was that much of an issue of being beat down in the inside, it's the lesser of two evils, because how many times did that happen to Ryan Fredericks? At the start of the season, the amount of times that Ryan Fredericks would get beat by his man down the inside. So if the lesser of two evils is Soufal, and he's done better than him since he's come into the team, even though you would say Fredericks with his pace is more of an attacking wing back, I'd continue to stick with Soufal. I actually think he's done very well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not saying he hasn't. I'm in actual fact with the Sheffield United game, I was asked who the sign of the season was for me so far, and I said Soufal straight away as it stands at the minute, because I think he's been one of the best signings we've done for a long time. The only problem is, as I say, we need to see him in his natural position. Like we all want to see everybody in their natural positions, of course, but the comparisons are between Masuaku, who's a winger being played as a wing back, than on a right back who's been playing as a wing back. Soufal beats him hands down because he's naturally a defender. Masuaku isn't.
I think it was a bit harsh on Fredericks. I don't like Fredericks. I think his technical ability as a football player isn't that good at all. I really don't.
Yeah, if he didn't have any pace, he wouldn't be in the Prem.
I agree. However, before he got his injury, he was playing really all right. It was the best spell we'd had for our club.
Yeah.
I do think
I'll go with that.
At times when you need a bit of pace, and like we've said tonight, sometimes you need to get players closer to especially when Hilaire plays up top on his own, we need to get players closer to him. Fredericks, every now and then, his bit of pace might not be a bad thing to try and utilise, but we haven't done that, and I know it would be a risk, but I think we do forget a little bit that the sort of 3 or 4 games he had before he got injured was the best spell he'd had for us, and a lot of people were saying he was improving as much as Cresswell was and as much as Masuaku was. And then all of a sudden he gets injured, and we all just remember the Fredericks of old. He was actually starting to look half decent. So
that's what I was saying. Like genuinely, I 100% agree. That's why I was saying. I thought he was actually mustered those first few games, and I thought it was his position. After he come back from injury, that Leicester game, unfortunately, Soufal played really well there. We all said he had his our best team performance, but I still think he should have had a fair crack at the whip to be able to say, come back into the team, potentially maybe against, the likes of a Liverpool or a City, somebody that are going to have a bit more pace on the counter-attack against us, and see how well he does. But like you said, I think fans will forget that he was like third, created most chances until Cresswell went and soared above him. From right back, Fredericks was doing the exact same thing from right wing back. So it is harsh on him. I completely agree. And I would have liked to have seen him come back in, because I think it was his place that was unfairly taken from him. But I think Soufal has been competent enough to the point. But I would like to see Fredericks come back. Say when we play Chelsea or someone like that, say they have, Werner, Pulisic, someone, multiple attacking threats down that side. I would like to see somebody with a bit more pace come in against them.
And also looking at the other team's fullbacks, if they haven't got pace, can Cresswell get at them? Yeah, I think it works both ways,
Yeah, agreed. We'll just finish off on them.
No,
go on, mate.
It was just very quick. The thing with Fredericks for me is there's so many false dawns with him. So I remember at the end of the main Pellegrini season, he had a barnstorming game against Southampton and scored, and then picked up an injury at the final game of the season against Watford, and then for the next season started okay, blew hot and cold, got injured and got kept out the side by Ngakia. I mean, let's just say devil's advocate, he doesn't get injured. Could we have seen a return of that where he just slowly declines in it's not so much form. I think with Fredericks, it's a discipline thing. I find he gets caught out of position quite well. He's very quick and very athletic, yes, but sometimes I find his positioning is what
his position is awful. It's awful. As I said to Frankie, if he didn't have any pace, he wouldn't be in the Prem.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he's got the physical. He's got the athleticism, not so much the technical talent. His crosses are okay. They're not, well beaten, but they get by. It's more the mentality that lets me down for Fredericks, where I prefer Kufel. But at the same time, against a much more pacey time, absolutely you could utilise Fredericks down that wing back. It's just you need Fredericks at his absolute best, not the Fredericks that sort of blows hot and cold, which we've seen too often, I'm afraid. That's my 2 pence on it.
No, good points, mate. Well, we'll just wrap up with a question Ben's asked. Is anybody going to the Man U game? I'm not, because I went for the option 3. So that's the 70% capacity, which I don't think will be for a few months yet. So not going Saturday, no. Any of you guys going?
Well, we won't know till tomorrow because the ballot's not done until tomorrow anyway. But in terms of
Oh, there we are then.
Is anybody other than corporate going to be there? Because surely they're going to be just handpicked.
I can confirm I'm not on the ballot because I'm not a season ticket holder.
But no,
There we are then.
I genuinely think it's just going to be corporate. It's going to be corporate and bondholders.
Thing is, though, I'm all.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say I'm all the way up here in Yorkshire, so I'm in East Yorkshire, which is tier 3. So even though we've got season tickets, there's no way I can get out at the minute to get down south anyway. So yeah,
that's why he's got chicken casserole, not pie and mash. For me, you couldn't give me a ticket and go. For me, it's not football yet. To go and sit there, not be able to sing, not be able to stand up and jump around, and I don't think they'll serve beer because I don't think they'll want people congregating down the bottom.
Well, they can't without any decent food anyway, mate. So.
And they don't have that. That's for
Substantial
sure.
meal.
There, so, for me, it just isn't football. And if someone turned around to me tomorrow and said, "There's a ticket," I'd say thank you, but no, thank you. And,
it's also with the London Stadium. It's more about the experience. Like it's not like we're Upton Park where there's a bit of atmosphere, even if it was half empty. London Stadium, I don't enjoy going there. For me, what I enjoy is the journey in, the walk to the stadium, packed fans, hearing singing and shouting. The concourse at the beginning and afterwards and going to the pub after. You're not going to have any of that right now. What you're going to have is sitting there in the doldrums, hearing some echoes, someone in the corner just going, "Go on, West Ham!
Well played, dear boy, well played.
Holla! That's what you're going to hear. So there's no point going.
I've never heard that ever.
No, I'm just trying to think of the most pathetic chant.
The best time to abuse the ward, though, if you did manage to get in there, because you just run around the whole stadium. You've just pretty much got it to yourself, haven't you? So if anyone's brave enough.
And also, it'd be like that really weird, I can't remember what game it was, where we were all given those SPO bet clapper things. Do you remember?
Oh my
It would sound like that. I mean, but I've excluded myself out of it because I'm asthmatic, and the website says that you have to wear your face covering for 2 hours. I can't. I can go about an hour maximum on it. The FA's ruling on it isn't fully fledged yet. They haven't said it's part of the restrictions is the fact that you have to wear it. It's West Ham's have put their own restriction on it, which is understandable from one point of view and not from another. But I excluded myself because I can't. I'm not going to have breathing problems for West Ham. No way.
Just no point in risking it, really, is there? We'll all get back in eventually. The vaccine's getting rolled out next week, apparently. Just wait. It's fair enough if you want to go, but just do the sensible thing and just wait. And
some of us have made a solemn oath to not give the board a penny of their money until they go. So count me out.
Fair enough. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks everyone who's watched, commented. Subscribe to Garage Football if you're new, and we'll do more live streams like this as the season goes on. So take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.